We went to Chisinau, Moldova.
Yep, power's out.
Okay, well, let's
Okay.
see. I guess there's
Hold
a good reason.
Hello, friends. Welcome to Odessa, Ukraine. We want to share with you a little bit about life here in Ukraine and especially in Odessa during this war. So we have a couple of things lined up to talk with you about. Let me get my notes. I'll tell you what we have. We're going to talk about power outages that we've been experiencing, kind of let you know how that goes, what daily life is like with power outages. Also, how Russia has kind of changed the way it is fighting, the way it's attacking Ukraine. There's been some change in the last month or so. I want to share that with you because that's also affecting our life. So we're going to talk about Kherson, freeing up Kherson just a few weeks ago here in southern Ukraine, and also want to share with you some of the ministry things, Christine, at the Women's Center here, as well as some of our ministry in churches, outreach efforts. In fact, just got back from one today. So we're going to share all of those with you in this video coming up right now.
Well, good to have you with us. And this is kind of an unusual season for us. It's not like we haven't lived through a tough time like power outages, but really not anything on the scale like this one.
Well, first of all, we have had power outages in Ukraine before. Actually, we go all the way back. Let me ask you, did you have power outages in 1991 when Ukraine became independent from Soviet Union?
To be honest, I can't remember.
You don't remember?
I
Okay.
would say no.
Okay.
But I do remember lots of calls to save the heat,
Yeah.
don't open the windows in the winter time to make sure that the heat is not just, heating the outside.
But I do remember in 2014 when Russia first attacked and came and took Donbass, eastern Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was probably about this time of year, like end of November, December, probably for about a month at least, we had regular power outages. You remember that?
Yes. Well, at least at that time, they were scheduled. So you can kind of plan, okay, I'll do my laundry from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. because there's not going to be any electricity from 8 p.m. to midnight. And so at least we figured out the rhythm, and our kids were doing homeschool at that time. And I remember they had these little DVD players,
Yeah.
yes. And so we would try to charge them while we had electricity, and then when there was no electricity, they could still do some schoolwork.
And that was actually pretty doable. I actually remember that I kind of enjoyed it because I think that we had a power outage from 4 to 6 p.m. every day, and that was nap time.
4 to 6?
It seemed like
probably.
it was.
Okay.
I just remember it was dark already outside, and it was just like, okay, you just lay down and take a nap, and that was at that time, I think, mainly due to the coal supply.
Yes.
That the places where they make power, what do you call it? The power stations, they ran off of coal, and so the eastern Ukraine area is where Ukraine gets its coal from. So when that was cut off from them, they ran out of coal. But now, right now is different because right now the power outages that we're experiencing are because of missile attacks, right?
Yes, and the Russian military targeted specifically infrastructure, critical infrastructure in Ukraine. It was power lines, it was factories that made hot water for our centralized heating systems. And the reason why it's a lot more, I guess we feel it a lot more is, well, first of all, because they hit quite a few of those lines. Ukraine has four nuclear power stations,
Right.
and so they produce a lot of our electricity. And we actually, before Russia hit our electrical grid, Ukraine was selling electricity to the West, to Europe.
Well, and the biggest power station Russia has taken over,
Yes.
Zaporozhye.
Although Ukraine is still connected to it,
Okay.
and that's very important. And so when those connections were broken, the stations were still working, but there was no electricity going to the rest of Ukraine. So Odessa Odessa has been hit, I think, one of the regions that was hit the hardest because it depended a lot more on that connection. Yeah.
So, and that's the hitting the power grid and the infrastructure. That has been primarily last month and a half or so primarily that they've been doing that.
Yes.
And what's interesting is that we actually, at first, we didn't have the power outages. It was mainly in Kiev, central Ukraine, some other, Lviv, I think, got hit pretty hard in western Ukraine. And we were sitting here thinking, wow, we still have power. That was back in October, I think. And then somewhere, I think, beginning of November, well, actually, really, it was middle of November by the time it kind of really caught up to us, just a couple weeks ago.
Yes, and the thing is that some villages have not had power for days. It wasn't just like, you know, we have not had power, say, for 12, 14 hours, but some of the people did not even have any electricity for days. And so the biggest, I guess, problem in the cities today is that all of these big high-rises, these brand new apartment buildings that have been built in the last, let's say 10 years, probably, they're completely dependent on electricity to be there. Their water pumps run on electricity. Their heating is electric. I guess it runs on electricity.
Well, they don't have gas stoves.
And they do not have gas stoves.
So at least we have like gas stove tops, so even when electricity's out, we can light it with a match. We can
At
still
least we can heat ourselves some tea or
make some tea.
cook some food for ourselves.
Where's my tea?
And plus to that, the buildings that are over 10 stories high are not allowed to have gas in their kitchens. So our building is 9 stories high, and it's an older building built in the 70s. So actually all of our systems are separated. None of them are dependent on each other. So so thankfully when we don't have water, we have electricity and gas and heat. And when we don't have electricity, we can still eat something and we're still warm.
Okay, so let me ask, let's talk about like daily life, what it's like now. For instance, how often and how long do we have electricity for?
Well, that's still a big question because we are still under the emergency power outages in our area. So there's no schedule. They tried to come up with a schedule, but I think that Odessa area is experiencing shortages.
They would publish a schedule like in the morning, and then by afternoon they say, "Oh, sorry, it's emergency situation again, and it's not going to be by the schedule." But like generally, I would say it seems like the last few days or week, like maybe 10, 12 hours without electricity each day. Would you say?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Obviously, we have electricity now. We didn't have it this morning.
So if all of a sudden in the middle of this video you see the light going out, look what we have. We have some candles.
Okay, so, all right, let's talk about how we get through it. And that's the first thing. We bought these candles, and that was like the simplest thing. We bought, a few little candle holders, and just, these are already been burnt, but they're, how long are those?
They're quite long.
12 inches or something, right?
Yeah, they're 12-hour burning candles, and they are very good, very quiet burning.
And I feel like that's
efficient.
probably one of the like simplest solutions to not having light.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yes, for sure.
Obviously, it doesn't run the washing machine, but,
No.
but at least gives you light, and that's nice. You can just have. I mean, generally at night, like one candle in a room is enough to kind of see what you're doing, right?
Yeah. And the reason why we don't have a generator, which many people probably have a question, why don't you get a generator, is because we live in an apartment building, and there's no way that we can set the generator, say, outside. We're on the 4th floor.
Yeah.
So it's not really feasible for us.
But what we do have is the next best thing.
Oh, yes.
Which is this right here, this guy. Okay, this is an EcoFlow power station, and basically what it does is it has 600 watt hours of battery power, and it has 2 outlets, or we can plug anything in that takes 600 watts or less, and we can run lights. We can I've ground coffee, run our coffee grinder with it in the morning.
Gotta have coffee sometimes.
But we can plug in, a couple of lights if we need to. Obviously, it has some USBs on the front. We can plug in our phones and make sure all of our phones, iPads, and stuff like that get charged. It also has a light on it, which is actually very helpful at times. So we just pull this out, and this will at least give us, well, depending on what we're running off of it, I mean, it can give us 10, 15 hours or more of power for some very basic things.
Yeah, we've never had a time when we completely depleted that.
And what I do
battery.
with that is, so at the office, at the ministry office that we have the optical internet there, and if I plug our router and our Wi-Fi in to this power station, we have internet even when the power is out. And so even like that's what we were doing today. Today, I got there this morning, I thought there was power, there was no power, and so plug the internet in. I already have a extension cord up there and everything. Plug the Wi-Fi in the router, and we have nice, fast internet. Probably even faster than regular because everyone else is out of power, so they're not using the internet. No lights, but...
Well, Nicholas can still work on his schoolwork.
Yeah.
It's a little difficult when it's dark or all around you. It really puts you to sleep.
What I did want to share, though, is one of the difficulties about not having power is the driving situation in the city.
Yes.
And it really is dangerous because imagine, and we're living in a city of 1 million people, and when the power is out, it's out. And that means street lights are not working, stoplights are not working.
It's just a blackout.
It's completely dark, and now, it's cold, it's rainy, it's... we're in the mid-30s, down to freezing,
and people in Ukraine usually wear dark-colored jackets.
dark like we're wearing right now. Right?
Yeah, just for reasons of not having to wash their white
And so
coats.
I know that just recently I came by a crosswalk and there was a body laying there, and it is really pretty. It's kind of scary to drive at night, and even scarier to walk. Because imagine crossing the street. We have to cross the street sometimes. Streetlight's not working, the stoplight's not working, the streetlights aren't working, and so that is a dangerous thing when the power is out.
Yeah, so we have ordered some good, powerful little flashlights that we could carry with us. I mean, we do have our cell phones that have a light that we use when we cross the street. We point.
But that probably is the other most handy thing is a flashlight like this. You don't really want a huge one because you have to carry it around all the time. So it goes in my pant pocket, and especially when we come home, and we have to go up the stairs. We're on the 4th floor.
The stairwell is dark.
It's dark, so you need a flashlight.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I particularly, the trouble that I particularly ran into recently is in Ukraine, when you turn 25, 45, and 65, you have to renew your documents because they update your picture, update your information. And so I happened to have a birthday last month, and so I had to renew my permanent residence here.
Wait, you're 25 now?
Yes. And so I haven't had to do this in a very long time since I've gotten my permanent residence. And so, unfortunately, I had to do this now, and now the power outages just threw the whole system in disrepair, and the offices that make sure that they collect your fingerprints and take your picture for this ID card. It's just full of people. People are unhappy. One office is out of electricity, so all these people that work there, they have to go to the other office that still has electricity. It's just nightmare. So Nicholas and I braved one of the offices, and thankfully the Lord was giving us success. And today we applied, and hopefully in about 20 days we should get our permanent residence cards. But it really throws the whole country in disarray, just the lack of electricity. So, Ukraine is gradually getting, the companies, different offices, they're getting generators. And if you walk downtown, you often just, all you hear is just the generators going outside. And that's how you know, okay, I guess this part of the city doesn't have any electricity. But, people are adjusting. It's just amazing that people are they're flexible. And when there is a very important goal ahead, the goal is to win over the aggressor, people will survive. It was interesting. We have a couple of students from Nigeria that came back to Ukraine. And they came to visit us yesterday, and we were sitting there talking to them, and it was dark in the office, and we had the light burning, and they said, oh, this is like normal to us. Like in Nigeria, everyone has a generator. We constantly have power shortages. So for them, I guess it was not anything unusual.
Yeah. So next thing I want to talk about is the way that Russia is kind of changed how they're fighting. Yeah. Before, let's say back in September, we would have maybe one, maybe two, maybe three air raids every day, right? Mm-hmm. Now, we haven't had, no, we did have an air raid, 2 days ago, I guess. No, yesterday. Mm-hmm. Sorry, yesterday.
But it was only like 15 minutes.
Yeah, it was like 15, 20 minutes. Nothing came of it. But generally now, we don't very often have air raids. Why is that?
Can you, let me explain to you when we do have air raids, why we actually get air raids. Whenever Russian airplanes take off anywhere surrounding Ukraine, near Caspian Sea, in Crimea, in Belarus, right away there's air raid all throughout Ukraine because often
airplanes that they know carry long-ranged missiles.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And Russia has some hypersonic missiles. So when the missile is fired, it's too late already to give an air raid to the whole country because by the time people hear it, the missile will already have landed. So usually as soon as those planes take off, then we all hear the air raid on our phones, on our apps. And so Ukrainian troops, Ukrainian military monitors Russian aircraft. And that's why we get air raids. So last time Russia just took some airplanes up into the air, but there was no attack. And so when they go back down, then we have the air raid canceled.
So basically, Russia has been kind of constantly firing a missile here, a missile there, some kamikaze drones here, some there. And that's been kind of the way it's been since the beginning of the war. But somewhere in the beginning of October, they changed their tactic to now, instead of just shooting a missile here and there every once or often, they gather everything together and they do a massive attack. And so between those massive attacks, we don't have any air raids, thankfully,
because they stockpile missiles.
And I think the reason they do that is because they try to overwhelm the air defenses. And I don't know why they didn't do that before. It actually seemed to be a little more successful in some ways. But we had, I think the first one was October 10th. And they hit Kiev pretty hard, and they hit the electric grid and some different places. And then we had one, when was it? Well, I know we had one beginning of November. Right after your birthday, actually. It's like November 12th, I think.
And then November 23rd.
And then November 23rd was the last one. So that was exactly a week ago from today, recording this video.
And in fact, we went to Moldova to celebrate Thanksgiving with our teammates there. And we planned that trip a while ahead. And when we got there, Moldova, we went to Chisinau, Moldova.
Yep. Power's out.
Okay, well, let's see. I guess there's a good reason.
I can keep the light on this thing.
Okay. Hold on. Let's see. Oh, there you go. So.
Okay, that'll work.
So, when we got to Moldova, and when the attack happened on Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving, the power went out in Moldova too, because Moldova is connected to Ukraine's grid. And actually, the whole Chisinau, the whole capital,
I think the whole country went out.
the whole
Actually.
country went out. I mean, the country of Moldova doesn't. It had a hydroelectric station, but it's taken by Russia. It's Transnistria, and it's been under Russian control since the early 90s. So yeah, so we thought, okay, maybe we're not going to have electricity in Moldova, but thankfully it came back in Moldova. So we did have a very nice Thanksgiving.
Yeah, so it was out for an hour and a half or 2 hours there, but it was out for a long time here, and I know because we have a security system, and so I can kind of check the security system to see if it has power or not, and I don't even know it was out for 24 hours or so.
Yeah, we had.
But before that too, we had another outage. I think that was maybe I don't remember. Maybe after the 12th of November. We had that power outage for like 30 plus hours.
Yeah.
And so.
Well, thankfully, my parents they live close nearby, but it looks like their building is connected to the regional hospital that is here across the street from us, and so of course, even in under such circumstances, they try to give power to those very critical places. So my parents actually have had electricity many of the times, and even now they have electricity, and Nicholas is over at their place doing homework.
By the way, was the washing machine going just now?
No?
Okay, good.
No, I got the laundry done at night. Okay. We were doing the laundry,
and
then when we had electricity.
Yeah, you have to wake up and get it done.
Yeah.
So anyway, Russia has gone to these massive attacks of like 70 or 100 missiles within the span of a couple, 3 hours maybe. And between those attacks, basically they have to gather all the missiles. And so it's been a week since the last attack, and people are now predicting that, actually they predicted yesterday there would be an attack. There was an airplane that went up, but it didn't attack. And then they're predicting maybe today. Anyway, basically they're saying they're ready for another attack.
Yeah.
But now they're saying it could be up to 400 missiles.
Yeah. So 400 missiles is actually a lot. I don't think Ukraine has had such a massive attack at one time.
I'm not sure how many missiles were on the first day. I think the first day it was maybe like 200 or something.
200? Oh.
I don't know. It was more.
Anyway.
Yep. Nicholas is calling. Yeah, that's fine. You can go get it. So the other thing I wanted to talk about was Kherson. Probably if you're watching the news, you're aware that Ukrainian forces freed up Kherson recently, and that was a big success for Ukraine, and something that wasn't, I don't think that was not planned by Russia, although they tried to make it sound like they planned for it. So Christina, and you have some relatives in Kherson.
Yes, I do have a distant relative, and so it was a grandma who's 80, a mom who's my age, and her daughter who is 16. And their son was on the ship. He was a part of a crew on the ship when the war started. And so he found out that the Russians are moving into Ukraine from Crimea, from the cook on the ship who was Russian. And so he sent his mom money to quickly evacuate from Kherson, because Kherson is very close to the Crimean Peninsula. But the grandma did not want to go. She was 80 years old, and so the mom, of course, could not leave grandma behind. So they all stayed, and they stayed in the occupation, and it was truly terrible what they had to live through. But now it's liberated, and they still don't want to leave, even though they don't have heat, electricity, water.
I was going to go on Monday and take them out of Kherson, but they kind of hadn't made up their mind whether they wanted to go or not, so I ended up not going. Although their son did come yesterday. Mm-hmm. We were able to find some friends, or pastor friend was going to take some aid there, and so he picked him up on the way back. So that was good. But the difficulty with Kherson now is that now Kherson is being hit harder.
Yes, because the Russians are just across the river from Kherson, And so
I mean, thankfully, when Ukrainian forces took it, they took it basically without fighting in the city.
but
Maybe there was just a little bit, but there wasn't really like any destruction of the
no,
city when
well,
Ukrainian forces took it.
except that the Russian forces destroyed all of the infrastructure as far as like heating is concerned,
water.
electric stations, water pumps, those things that allow the city to function. were
And even
destroyed.
the mobile connection
Yes.
is well. Although I talked to your aunt, a couple of times, but it's just difficult to find a mobile connection. In fact, for us, even here, like right now, when the power goes off, we can still have a mobile connection, but it's usually pretty poor, and often doesn't have data. Or if it says it has 3G or something, it doesn't mean that. I mean, it might be just enough to send a text or something like that.
It's just lots of people are using it because of the power
Well,
outage.
and plus, I think that their stations go out too. They lose power sometimes too. So we end up being kind of cut off as far as that goes. But praise God, Kherson is free, and a lot of churches are going in there and bringing aid. There's a lot of need. I think especially in Kherson now, of course, because they're hitting it harder. The Russians are shelling it from across the river, but also in the villages around there. So continue to pray for Kherson. What do I have on here next? Women's Center. Tell them a little bit about what's going on in the Women's Center right now.
At this point, we're continuing the work at the Women's Center. That's where I volunteer, and I meet with 2 gals there. And our meetings are, with some of them who are interested, we do present the gospel, we talk about the Bible, we learn the Bible with them. But others who are not quite ready, we're just doing the 5 love languages, and then hopefully they'll have questions as we study that book, and then we go from there. But the problem at this point is, at first we're concerned like, if there's an air raid, technically we're supposed to have clients leave the premises because our premises are not really made for hiding during a bombing. But then we figured, we can have our clients sign a waiver saying that they don't mind, they take full responsibility for being there during the air raid. But now it's not a problem. The problem is the power outages, because it gets dark around 4:30. It's already pretty dark. And so if there's no power, our center cannot be heated because our heat, even though it's gas, the pump is electric. So then we cannot continue the heating process. And so of course we cannot make tea or cannot heat anything, and it gets cold fairly quickly, and it's dark. So I mean, we can have candles, but it just makes it that much more difficult. So we're trying to figure out what we can do, and I think there's help coming from Romania, from our team in Romania. So we're excited, looking forward to getting that convoy.
So in the mornings, on Sunday mornings, I've been visiting various churches and ministering in them in Odessa, as well as in Nikolaev. Been able to get out to Nikolaev, one of the churches out there that we work with, and was there. Actually took a couple people from our church and visited them one Sunday. Was there for a midweek service as well recently. As well as in Nikolaev region, visited a church there in Shurina. Also coming up, going to be visiting some more churches. Anyway, Sunday mornings I try as much as possible to get around to different churches, visit them, encourage them. If we can help them in any way with the aid work that we're doing, then we help them through our Ukraine Crisis Fund. We've been able to help quite a few of them to continue the aid work. I think especially the church in Nikolaev is doing a really great job, where they have around 800 people every Sunday that come, and they're able to give aid out to them. And so it's just amazing opportunities to be able to preach the gospel in those settings. Thankfully, Nikolaev is a little bit quieter now that Ukrainian troops have freed Kherson and pushed the Russians further away. But they still have really big problems with water. The Russian troops recently blew up the water line going to Nikolaev again. You knew that, right?
Yes, I did. And that's, Nikolaev has always had that problem, has always had problem with getting good drinking water, even though it's on the river. The river right there near Mykolaiv is salty. The water is salty, and it's not good for use. And so while Kherson was occupied by Russians, Mykolaiv had to use that water, and that water is so bad that it just ruined lots of pipes because of its mineral content. And so they really were looking forward to getting water from Dnieper River.
And so on Sunday evenings, we're meeting with our small group of Odessa International Fellowship, but we do still have a few people here, so continue to pray, because as they return, internationals, we want to be able to be open and be able to minister to them. And then, just a lot of opportunities during the week to outreaches. In fact, just today, just like 2 hours ago, I returned from a outreach for internally displaced people that's just in the market almost across the street from us. It's cold outside. It's like 33 degrees Fahrenheit, like 1 degree Celsius. Stood out there for over an hour and was able to preach the gospel from Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6, about the Prince of Peace, to about 200 or so people standing outside in the cold. And then I was able to talk to a number of them individually. And, it's just, to me, that's such a invigorating type of a ministry to be a part of, where you see the great need, and not only the physical need, obviously, but you see in their eyes the searching for hope, is what I would call it. And I told them today, I said, listen, I want to be able to give you some hope. And so I shared with them the hope that we have in Jesus. And a couple of them came up to me and thanked me after that. And so our goal there is, of course, to share the gospel, but we also want to go further and help them to be able to study God's Word together. So we're working on some plans to be able to put some Bible studies together for them. I want to share that story too about recently I was in a village which is just across the river from here in Odessa region. The border with Moldova is actually controlled by Russia. It's a small strip of land called Transnistria. It's a contested land. And across the river there, we were across the river in the Ukrainian side, in a small village, and just doing aid work. We have some representatives in that village, and they help us to be able to find people that are in need. So I go with another brother, and we stop basically on the side of the road, open up the van, people gather, I preach. I was preaching from Matthew chapter 5, from the Beatitudes that day. So I shared with them a short message, prayed for them. We had, like some Bibles, some New Testaments, I think, for them, some children's Bibles, and then handed out some aid for them as well. And this last stop that we're at happened to be right next to the Orthodox temple. And as we're finishing up, here comes this car kind of roaring up pretty quick, and these two ladies get out, and they are the wives of the priests there, and literally they're almost like running towards us and kind of pushing through the crowd, and they come up and they said, "Who are you? Where are you from?" And I said, "Well, we're just helping people here, and we're evangelical Christians." "Oh, why are you filling their heads with all kinds of nonsense? Why are you sitting here next to the Orthodox Church?" And I got my Bible and I said, "Listen," I showed her the Bible. I said, "Listen, this is the Bible. All I did was read to them from Matthew chapter 5 and share with them a little bit from God's Word. You also believe in God's Word, right?" And they said, "No, we believe in Holy Mary." And I was dumbfounded. I was dumbfounded. But unfortunately, that's the darkness that the many are in, where they're worshiping Mary, they're worshiping angels, anything and everything but the living Jesus Christ. So pray for us as we continue here. And I also want to add just a final note. One of the things I've been trying to work on here is we have a fund that is helping churches all over Ukraine, not only in Odessa, in Nikolaev, in Kharkov, in Donbass, in Kherson, in Kiev, in Kropivnitsky. And so I've been doing my best to try to gather information. What are these churches doing? How are they ministering the gospel? How are they ministering to people's needs? And so I've created something called Sway on Microsoft. I'll put a link in the description for this video. I would like you to take a look at it and just to see what God is doing through, and this is a small glimpse, although I think maybe we have 30, 35 churches and ministers there, many of them who are risking their lives, like literally risking their lives. I just talked to a friend of mine today. He's going to Balakleia today, and then he's going to Bakhmut. Bakhmut is the absolute epicenter of the war right
insane.
now. And such dangerous areas, and these people are motivated by the love of Christ, share the gospel, to help people. And so I'd ask you to take a look at that, look at some of those pictures, look at some of the videos that are shared there, and just thank God and pray for these people. And if you can't, support them, because they are continuing on in the ministry with many of them with support from outside, from churches in the West, but also from churches here and individuals here in Ukraine.
And lots of these people who are doing the ministry, they lost their churches because Russia took over. And these people were forced to leave. And so now they're serving, they're driving around, they're bringing aid, they're risking their lives to serve.
All right, friends, I want to thank you for taking your time today to listen and to watch, and ask that you keep us in your prayers, keep Ukraine in your prayers. We do believe that God will give victory to the Ukrainian people, but it's going to be a difficult winter to get through, so Ukraine definitely needs your prayers.
And pray for our family, because at this point our family is kind of scattered throughout the world. And we're here in Ukraine with our son Nicholas. He's the youngest, he's 12. Our two girls, Noelle and Anastasia, are in Washington State, as well as our grown son, Mishael. And they're there with their grandparents, Caleb's parents, and so they're in a wonderful place. But you know, we miss them. They're still very young. Noelle is finishing her high school, her senior year, and Anastasia is in her junior year. So pray that they would be able to make it. And actually, we're waiting for them to come and visit us this winter break.
Our two girls.
Our two girls, yeah. And so many people are surprised. Why would they?
Yeah.
Why would they?
And all
want
they say
to
is
go?
we want to go home. Yeah.
Yeah. So please pray for us, and we're just so thankful for all of your support, all of your notes of encouragement. It really means a lot to us, and we send you our warm greetings from Ukraine.
Keep that candle burning, right?
Yes.
Okay, guys. Blessings.